This is Ryan Elliott for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm delighted to be joined by Adam Smith today. Adam, we've got a lot to talk about before we get down to it. How are you?
I'm all right, Ryan. Yeah, well, yeah, it's an interesting time, obviously, for everybody now as we move into the sort of next phase with sport. Fight camp was a fantastic success. We loved doing it. It was a very intense month. I had a break, a holiday with the family, and kids are back at school for the first time in 6 months. And yeah, some sort of normality is resuming. But of course, the boxing world turns, and every 5 minutes it's something different. So been spending a lot of time with Eddie, working out the next moves for the weeks ahead. And yeah, very happy with what we've come up with, and more to be announced as well in the coming weeks. So yeah, it's an exciting time, a different time. I've caught up with all sorts of people throughout this, from Todd DeBerth to people from PBC to everybody, and everyone's in the Frank Warren, everyone's in the same boat. We've been dealt the cards. The most important thing is health and safety throughout this, and there's a pandemic going on, and we need to listen to Robert Smith and the board, and there's rules and regs, and make sure that everyone's as safe as they can be, and we obviously put on as many good fights as we can with the circumstances as they are. No crowds, the difficulty with that, the gate, and a lot of adaptability. But it's a challenge, and it's one we're taking head on.
You mentioned it there. We've just sort of closed the book on summer and the whole fight camp schedule as well. And we'll come on to what's coming in autumn. You guys have just announced a lot of shows. But how do you reflect on that whole fight camp summer that we've just had in the shows as well?
Yeah, listen, with fond memories already. I mean, I think it was a very innovative idea from Matchroom. Eddie and Frank worked really hard on it behind the scenes. The Sky production operational outfits were fantastic. There was a unity between the two businesses, as there has been throughout our relationship, our long relationship. But especially for Fight Camp, it was a very difficult idea to put into practice. There were a lot of hurdles to jump over, and I think looking back at it, my big push was that we wanted and we must have quality fights, and that was the thing. At whatever level it was, we wanted really good fights, and I think over the 4 weeks we got that. I thought we got some great stories. We got some memorable ones. That first night where we had the Cheeseman-Eggington, war, and we'd already had Tennyson and Gwynn, and it was just, that was a fantastic start. You had the women's duel between Terry Harper and Tasha Jonas, which was a fantastic fight, one of the best fights in recent times. It was an absolute cracker. Then you had a great night when sort of Rachel Ball upset Shannon Courtney. You had Felix Cash and Zelfa Barrett sort of coming through some sticky moments. That was a really good sort of tradie show. And then, of course, the finale with the Katie Taylor-Pursoon fight, which was another really good one. Probably not quite as good as the one they had in the Garden, but it was in the other Garden. But it was a fantastic rematch. And then, of course, the Povetkin-Whyte story, when Dillian seemed on the cusp of victory and on the cusp of a world title shot, and boom, it turns on its head. So, really pleased with it. We got it looked terrific. It looked fantastic. Yes, there were 120, 30 people there. It wasn't the same. I mean, the atmosphere wasn't what it, we love the crowds, and we missed that desperately. And also difficult for us as commentators, 10 meters back from ringside, socially distanced from each other. Matt and I are normally sort of, snuggled up on a bench on the front row, and, it's very different, but, you've got to be versatile. And the most important thing was we've got really good fights out. I think probably the one memory I'll have, not just the fireworks and the way it looked, but the really good memory was the fighters were so focused. They were so dedicated, so focused, so fast out of the traps post-lockdown. They were ready and they wanted to fight. They didn't have to worry about selling tickets and the sort of other distractions. They just focused on the job in hand. And I think that's why, win or lose, there were some really great performances. I think they enjoyed their time in the bubble with the media attention on them. That was a new thing for all of us, and it was difficult to get your head around, sort of being COVID tested and put in a room for 16, 17 hours, then let out into the bubble. But actually, once you were out there, it was really it was really sort of communal and collaborative, as much as you were sort of slightly socially distanced, and it was odd, but you'd all been tested. And so I think that it all gave us some learnings for going forward. You know, Eddie and I talked about whether we wanted to move this into September as well, but we thought, look, leave the party up there at its highest. You know, we went out with a bang with the heavyweights, and then, you know, we thought, let's have time to reflect on it and rethink and reset and go again, because obviously the weather's going to change, and you know, and as we know, you know, week by week things are shifting with the government policy and the board, and so, you know, we've got to be on our toes. But we were very pleased with it all, and yeah, as I said, you know, thanks to the fighters for preparing to take harder challenges, to take the risks, to get back in the ring and do what they do best. And as I said, the losers, the winners, it didn't really matter. There were a bunch of great stories out of it, and you know, I think it was a really inspiring project, and I'm sure we'll come back and have another crack at it maybe next summer. But yeah, well done to everyone involved.
Adam, as you mentioned, Fight Camp did sort of finish off with that spectacular fight between Dillian White and Alexander Povetkin. Among a lot of news in the last few days, the rematch, November 21st, Dillian White, Alexander Povetkin, looks to be sort of head in the autumn schedule for Sky Sports. Can we expect similar fireworks to what was delivered in the first fight?
Well, I don't know. You know, I mean, Alexander Povetkin, you know, has always had power. He's always had a skill set, and you know, he found the punch of his career, didn't he? You know, he's had an Indian summer, really. I mean, a lot of us thought he was lucky to get a draw against Michael Hunter, and you know, it seemed at times in the fight with Dillian as though, you know, the legs weren't quite there, and he was obviously hammering away at the body, and he was doing, you know, a lot of things right. But, you know, Dillian behind that jab, and he looked sort of assured and calm, and, you know, with the knockdowns in the fourth round, it was, you know, it was a major shock. And listen, that's heavyweight boxing for you. You know, remember it with Lennox Lewis being knocked out twice when he wasn't expected to be, with Oliver McCall and Hasim Rahman. And I think there's an interesting sort of a comparison there, because with McCall, he decided to change trainers from Pepe Carrera to Emmanuel Stewart. He spent 2.5 years, you know, rebuilding, learning the Stewart techniques, the Kronk techniques. And when he got McCall back in a ring, he completely dominated, and McCall had that breakdown. But with Hasim Rahman, it was a shock in South Africa, but he hadn't really acclimatized, and thought he's probably only got himself to blame. And he went straight back in there and knocked him out in America. So, you know, interesting that, you know, do you take an immediate rematch, don't you? And I think with Dillian, he's the sort of character that, look, you know, he's lost to Anthony Joshua before. He dusted himself down. He got back. He learned from it. He's only had a handful of amateur fights, and, you know, he'd done so well. That was almost a sort of shame with it, and why people sort of, their heart went out to Dillian, because he'd sort of got through so many hurdles and sort of fights with the likes of Derek and Lucas Brown and Joseph Parker and, you know, Oscar Rivas, and he's so close. But, you know, that is always the danger. You know, Povetkin is, you know, was a terrific amateur. He's had a great professional career. And those 2 defeats to Klitschko and Joshua. You know, this is a serious fighter, and, you know, and you don't lose your power. And it was a clever punch. You know, it was right through the middle, the uppercut, and it took everybody by surprise. And yeah, that's where we are. So, you know, Povetkin has the rematch to take care of. He has to go in there and believe he could do it all again. And Dillian has to think, look, he made a mistake in there. Everything was going well, and he's got to correct that. He's kept with the same team. I saw him half an hour afterwards, and he said he wanted the rematch straight away then. He said he wanted it the next day. He said he wanted it the next week. So that's where we're going. Very exciting, November the 21st. And, you know, we'll see. It's a fascinating situation. You know, is it a fight? Did Povetkin get lucky with that shot? Or is, you know, White susceptible to uppercuts and hooks? And, you know, if he can do it once, Povetkin, he can do it again. Rematches sometimes go the same way, sometimes quicker, sometimes they change and they go on their head, and sometimes the styles are very different. I'm thinking Eubank Collins, when, you know, Collins sort of out-psyched Eubank in the first fight, and then the second fight he out-muscled him physically, you know, charged him like a bull. So, you know, who knows? It's one that's going to be an exciting addition to the sort of autumnal winter program. And yeah, it leads the way of our first big announcement back after Fight Camp.
There was some eyebrows raising, a few concerns raised as well, Adam, about the relatively quick turnaround for Dillian after such a heavy knockout, you know, getting back in the gym, getting back in training and going into another big fight like this. Do you understand those concerns?
Definitely, of course I do. As I said, you know, the Lennox Lewis comparison, I think if if he decided, I mean, the other thing was that Mark Tibbs, of course, had guided him for so long, and that changed. So he had a new corner team, and I mean, he just seemed so relaxed, Dillian, in the week. He seemed so calm, and he thought that everything had gone right. He was light on the scales. He was boxing well, and does he go back to the sort of the Dillian White that's just awkward and tough and rough, or does he do what he was doing last time and box behind that jab, keep the space, and just not make that mistake, not leave himself open? It's a difficult one. Psychologically, a lot of people, a lot of fighters would say that you need time, you need a confidence booster, but others, depending on the manner and the person, the individual they are, they just want to go straight back in. I mean, it's a dangerous risk for Dillian, because if he loses, dramatically again, that's the world title shot out the window. It'll be very hard to come back from that. And he knows that, but this is Dillian White you're talking about. This is a guy who had a tough upbringing. He became a dad young. He came and settled in London, and he had his fair share of issues, and he had to deal through those, and he's had knockbacks and people doubting him, and he's had that all the way through. And he's a lot more mature now, Dillian, and he's a very engaging character, as you know. And I think, look, it's each into their own. He wants it. We want it, don't we? As fans, we all want to see what happens next. And it's great that we don't have to wait a year as boxing fans, as boxing commentators. We can go straight back into it. But it is a dangerous a risk. It is it's one that, he's rolling the dice with it. And but it's his decision. This is what he wants. And, Anthony Joshua went back into a rematch straight away with Andy Ruiz, having been taken apart in the garden, down 4 times, and desperate loss. He took a little bit more time than Dillian's having. It's not quite, I think, 91 days or something, is it, that Dillian's having? But it's that was longer. It was June to December. But Anthony Joshua worked on things in the gym. He got it right. He boxed brilliantly the second time and totally nullified Ruiz. So that's probably something for Dillian to look at and say, look, you can go straight back in and you can get it right. And Dillian needs to do that. But let's not forget Alexander Povetkin in all this. Povetkin is the one that won the fight. He'll be very confident about going in and believing that he can get that next world title shot and maybe become a world champion all over again at 41, 42. I mean, he's as fit and conditioned as ever, even if the legs, the reflexes may not quite be what they once were. And we certainly thought after the Hunter fight that maybe that was the case. Barry Jones was just saying even this week that he thinks he's not nearly the fighter he was, but you still have your power and you still have those, he was a top level fighter and has been for so many years that, he's the one that won the fight. He'll be confident he can go in and do it all over again.
The final one on White Povetkin, Adam, just to go back to the first fight, I'm sure you saw it. There was some criticism from certain quarters of boxing fans with regards to the lack of acknowledgement for Povetkin's work, perhaps in the early stages of the fight. I'm sure you saw some of it. What did you make of it?
Listen, everything's subjective. We're not going to say, Matt and I are not going to say, or Carl and I, whoever is commentating, and not say we get it right all the time. I think I've done countless interviews about this already. Ultimately we call it as we see it. The one thing I hate with all of this is people saying we're biased. We're not biased at all, right? We call a fight as we see it. Were we biased when Andy Ruiz became the first Mexican heavyweight champion, and that was the story? Were we saying, Anthony Joshua deserved to win that fight? Of course he didn't. He got taken apart, he got taken out. We call it as we see it. We've done this for a long time, but obviously there are going to be people that subjectively see a fight differently. I would say we're in a strange situation. There is no atmosphere at ringside. We're 10 meters back as commentators. We're socially distanced from each other. And it's not the same. It's not like having, Matt alongside me, or Carl, or Andy Clark, or the guys alongside you on a front row at ringside where you're seeing every single thing and, very, very sharply. You're 10 meters back and you're commentating sort of from a long way back, and also, partly off the monitors as well. So, there's certain it's a certain different situation, an adaptability situation. I've watched the fight back a few times. Alexander Povetkin did did some decent work to the body. He did miss a lot as well. Dillian White was controlling a lot behind the jab. He was very much, for me, the fighter that was in control. You know, Alexander Povetkin, a couple of times he didn't really know where he was, which corner. First, I think at the end of the first round, he went almost back to the wrong corner. His legs looked shaky to me. He went back at the end of the fourth round when he got knocked down twice. He didn't, to me, look as though, you know, he had a lot left. So I think whatever you think, whether you think Povetkin won one or more of the early rounds, you know, Matt scored it to Dillian White. I think Matt is an incredible co-commentator and a brilliant scorer and judge of the fight. We're not the judges, though. The judges are there for a reason. You know, we guide with what we see. It's not necessarily what fight fans see. It's all subjective. Did people think, you know, Sam Megginson beat Ted Cheeseman? I'm sure there were some. I thought some people thought Cheeseman. Did people think Terry Harper beat Natasha Jonas? Probably. I thought Tasha Jonas won that fight. You know, it's all very subjective. It's down to the judges. The judges decide, you know, if it goes the distance. And, you know, Alexander Povetkin decided the outcome of that fight. So whatever, you know, way you look at the first few rounds, my feeling was that Dillian White was largely in control. He certainly was in control when he knocked him down twice in the fourth round. And, you know, that was the stunning part of it, that Alexander Povetkin found that shot when Dillian White was surely a round or two from victory. But yeah, don't know what you thought, Ryan, but the early parts of the fight, you know, I felt Dillian was doing fine.
Well, Adam, we've got a lot to get through. There's a lot that's just been announced coming to the way of Sky Sports. We'll start with September 26th. You've got the World Boxing Super Series final, Braidis Dorticus. If the last World Boxing Super Series final you had on Sky is anything to go by, we should be in for another cracker, Adam.
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic. Last year with Josh Taylor and Regis Proje, you know, it was absolutely fantastic. Regis was, you know, brilliant all the way in the build-up. That was a fantastic fight. Taylor just pulling it out at the end. I thought one of the best fights we've had on Sky. It really enjoyed that. And yeah, we should get another absolute fantastic matchup, you know, with Dorticus and Braidis. You know, they're two extremely good fighters, top level, good clash of styles. So stylistically, it's going to be really interesting. And yeah, you know, it's a great cruiserweight matchup. So very excited about that. That's a week on Saturday. You know, then we go into the Golden Contract on October the 30th. We've got a couple of really good finals there. Really particularly looking forward to Jazza Dickens and Ryan Walsh. And then we move into, you know, Joshua Buatsi Sunday the 4th with Chantel Cameron going for a world title too. Really excited about that show, getting Buatsi back, one of our best fighters. And, you know, he's in a tough one, tough enough one anyway, to come back after his long layoff. But he's a good fighter, unbeaten as well. Marko Calic and Alan Babic knows him well from the amateurs. Babic as well on the bill. Looking forward to that. Then we've got Lewis Ritson and Miguel Vasquez. You've got Savannah Marshall against Hannah Rankin for a world title. So two new women really in a way, in Chantel Cameron and Savannah Marshall, fighting for world titles in the space of a fortnight. So, you know, women's boxing absolutely flying, with Katie Taylor in pursuit, with Tasha and Terry Harper. And, you know, we're really excited on that front. And yeah, it's just a really good schedule to get us going again post-fight camp. So we're excited. You know, plenty happening on BT as well. We watched Anthony Yard win the other night. Love to see Buatsi and Yard down the line. A lot happening in America, of course, with PBC and Top Rank. But, you know, we're happy with continuing to bring the best possible shows we can to the UK audiences, 9, 10 o'clock at night. You know, big football matches happening, a lot of sport backlogged. And, you know, it's exciting times at Sky Sports again now. The one big problem we've got, the one big miss we've got, is crowds, and we're really sad not to have the fans there. And, you know, the more fans that we can get in as these, you know, fight weeks go through, the better, because that's the real buzz we miss. And you know, obviously we want to be back on that apron, on that front row. And we want to be surrounded by you guys, all the media. We want to be surrounded by the fans. It gives you that buzz. It brings everybody up a level, the fighters, everybody, the whole buzz and the feel of it. But one thing, as I said, I took out of fight camp was that the fact that fighters just gave great performances. So I think that will continue. So we've got to make sure the matches are good, which they are, and that we get the scheduling right as well, because there's so much sport. We don't want to lose boxing in the melee of all the other, the football, the cricket, the rugby, the golf, everything that's happening. We don't want to miss the darts, big darts coming up. don't want to miss that. We want to make sure that boxing still has a really good place. And of course, announcing White Povetkin as a huge Sky Sports box office night, puts a date in the calendar for November the 21st. So that's really exciting. And I'm hoping that maybe we can get Usyk-Chisora over the line in the coming hours. And, that will be another really good one. And we've got Anthony Joshua, of course, in December. Then they're talking about, the Fury Wilder 3 fight, getting that over the line. Todd DeBerth told me he's hoping December the 19th. And that'll be fantastic for fight fans. You've got the big heavyweights, stories. And of course, we've got that story of White Povetkin. We want to see it finished. We want to see what happens next. When the heavyweights flying, boxing's flying. And I think at this time, I said during lockdown to you and to Rob and Andy and everyone that I spoke to on Zoom calls, that we had to have patience. We weren't the first sport back, and we shouldn't have been. The doctors, the paramedics needed to be on the front line. And, we don't know if there's a second wave coming. We know that there's obviously, there's Northeast is going to shut down a bit, and we'll be able to get the Ritson fight up there. And, we're going to have to adapt week on week. But Eddie's hopeful we'll be able to get some crowds back, and we all want that. So, we're keeping with the guidelines, listening closely to the government, to Robert Smith, that we're doing the best we can. I mean, everybody's in this situation, whether you're Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum and Todd DeBerth, whether you're the PBC and Al Heyman, everybody's been dealt the same cards, and we just have to do the best we can. In a way, it's been a bit more collaborative. So, we'll see where we go with it. But, we're doing the best, and we hope fight fans are enjoying that. And I think Fight Camp was a great start.
You touched on it there, Adam. Usyk-Chisora, you said you're hopeful we can get something over the line in the coming hours. Eddie came out yesterday and said that all parties are trying to find a way, and that they feel pretty close. Can we expect to see that in October? Is that when that's been targeted for?
Yeah, I spoke to Eddie this morning. I've been messaging David A back and forth all week. Everybody wants to make this fight happen. It is difficult, Ryan. Without a gate, these fights are hard to make. And I think the fact that, we want to see Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce, and Frank's basically saying that can't happen without a crowd. And look, we managed to get White Povetkin without a crowd, and we made White Povetkin again. Obviously, we're hoping for crowd in November, but you've got to be, with the big money and the big purses, fighters have got to be adaptable. Broadcasters have got to be adaptable. Everybody does. Everybody's got to sort of, try and make these things happen. We all want Usyk-Chisora over the line. We should have seen it in May at the O2. It's whether we get a gate or not. We hope that there's some fans, but I'm hopeful. I said to Eddie, look, the next sort of 24 to 48 hours are crucial. But I really would like to see an announcement next week, hopefully a positive one. And I'd like to see it, back end of October, and it's all systems go, because I think it's a really interesting fight. Usyk's this incredible quality fighter, and everybody knows him from obviously the Super Series and Tony Bellew and everything else. But, now into the heavyweight division, Derek is so tough and rough and strong. And, when he's firing on all cylinders, which he seems to be by the reports from the gym, he's a tough night's work for anyone. So it's a really interesting fight. And obviously there's two characters there, and you add David and Eddie and others into the mix. You've got a great sort of few weeks build up. So I've told them I want to get on with it. So I'm waiting for the green light on that one, Ryan, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
A couple more things before I let you go, Adam. I'm not going to ask you about the legal process, obviously, but Canelo has sort of taken legal action against DAZN, against his promoters. One thing that came out of it that I did want to get your thoughts on was DAZN not considering Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders to be premium opponents. The likes of Khabib were. What did you make of that? Were you surprised to hear it?
I think they're premium opponents. What's a premium opponent? We're talking Gennady Golovkin. What's a premium opponent? This is where there's difficulties. Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders might not be known in America. That's the problem, to the scale that they're known here. Are they quality opponents and premium opponents in our eyes? Of course they are. We want to see Canelo in with great fighters. I was privileged enough to go and spend a week with him before the Danny Jacobs fight. It was a great fight between two extraordinarily good fighters, but Canelo was a little bit better. And, that's the sort of thing you want to see. You want to see him in with Golovkin. We got him in with Kovalev. Rocky Fielding had that dream chance against him. We want to see him in the fights with Billy Joe Saunders, with Callum Smith, with Golovkin, with others. We don't really mind. We just want to see him in great fights. it's a difficult situation. Obviously, it's one that, you know, we watch, you and I watch with interest. You know, we're not part of it. Golden Boy are his promoters, DAZN are the broadcasters, and you know, what we do know is that they signed a huge deal a couple of years back, and there was a massive amount of money that had to be found for each and every fight. Now, whether, you know, he should be paid more or less for the different opponents is actually something that they need to work out, and obviously they can't work it out. So that's why it's ended up where it has. Interesting that, you know, that it was pulled away because of some problems with the litigation and some, you know, some of the way they reference the businesses. Now, is that, you know, a legitimate mistake by the Canelo team and they just get back on with it, or is that just a sort of a suggestion that, hey, well, you know, we can take this the whole way, but let's try and come up with something? I don't know. It's a difficult one. Golden Boy have got other dates with DAZN. It's a complicated scenario, and it's not really one, as you say, for us to speculate on. We can watch it unfold. I think what we can say is that we want Canelo Alvarez back in the ring as soon as possible, because it's all very well him sort of sending a message on a yacht down in Miami on, you know, Mexican Independence weekend celebrating, but it's a sort of little reminder that, hey, you're missing me. And I think we all are. Canelo's a top quality fighter, one of the best of his generation, and we want to see him back in a ring. And I know we want to see him in with really good fighters. So let's hope it works itself out, and whatever happens, you know, with the legal process, we get him back in the ring before the end of the year. But we'll just wait and see and watch on that one.
With Smith and Saunders now, both of them were chasing that Canelo fight. Saunders looked incredibly close before everything that happened. Maybe with the return of crowds, is that a logical fight for them to just try and face each other at this point, maybe in 2021?
Oh, listen, it's a great fight to make. I've always said sort of Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Chris Eubank. You know, there's a load of sort of great domestic fights. And then, you know, you go back to the one we always talked about at a different weight, which is Amir Khan and Kell Brook. But, you know, sometimes they just, you know, these fighters, and especially with what's happened this year, and they're chasing the sort of big money paydays, and, you know, with no crowds here at the moment, it's very hard. So, you know, you're depending on, you know, pay-per-view, you're depending on maybe some international money or sponsorships or whatever. It's very hard to get all these big purses. So it's very tough to get, you know, these fights on. We want to see Billy Joe Saunders in with Canelo. We want to see Callum Smith in with Canelo. Could we put them together, Billy Joe and Callum? Of course we would, but there's a lot of money in that fight. Where does that come from? You know, it looks like we're going to have a number of Sky Sports box office events before the end of the year. We can't keep doing that for fight fans. We want to have a good lot of fights, a good system of fights on Sky Sports. That's important to us. You know, to have big nights on Sky Sports, 10 o'clock at night, you know, after the football, that's crucial for us. You know, the Sky Sports box office events are very special. So you can't have every, you know, we've been through that in the past where we probably had too many in a year, and we've got to be, you know, we've got to be mindful of fight fans as well in the situation that we're in, to make sure that when we do a box office event, it is absolutely, you know, it's the right thing to do at the right time. So we can't just have back-to-back pay-per-views, of course not. So it's difficult. It's difficult with the money that, you know, some of these guys are being paid. You know, the likes of Callum Smith in the World Super Series are paid huge amounts of money. You know, Billy Joe as well, and to keep those sort of purses, you know, you have to have, you know, the revenue to get back in, and it's very hard with no gates and you know, only certain times you can put the box office events on. It's really difficult, and as you're seeing, you know, it's just really us that are putting on we put on one box office event so far, but it's hard for others to do that with, you know, with the lack of a crowd. So I think we just have to sort of, maybe that word patience is back out. We have to just not, you know, run before we can walk. I think we've done a great job getting Fight Camp out. I think we need to get, you know, these fighters out again, fighting as regularly as they can, as we'll allow in this period. We have to make sure the heavyweight division, which is, let's be honest, the division that really governs the whole of boxing, make sure that is moving as fast as it can. There's nothing we can do with the Canelo situation. He's not our fighter. You know, Billy Joe and Callum are Eddie's fighters. So we're sitting down and we're working out the best moves for everybody. But, you know, in an ideal world, what would I say? I would say I hope Canelo fights Callum Smith, and I hope that Billy Joe Saunders maybe fights here, and then Chris Eubank comes involved. And, you know, it's always been a dream of mine to have a big night at Anfield. We've talked to the Liverpool owners, the Liverpool hierarchy about that. It was close to be done this year, when obviously, as a Liverpool fan, we won the title, and it would have been fantastic, you know, if we'd seen a Callum Canelo or a Callum Golovkin or a Callum Eubank or something like that, maybe put the Smith brothers on and other big, fighters in the Liverpool area. Now Tasha Jonas, look at her. You could have had the rematch with Terry Harper. There's loads of things ahead. We've got, there's a long way before stadium fights are even thought about. We should have been at Spurs, of course, which was going to be amazing with AJ and Pulev. It's going to take time. We're a year away, surely, from now, 9 months away, 10 months away from stadium fights. And, we have to wait on that. So it's all very difficult at the minute. And I think we just have to be thankful that fighters are getting out and boxing is carrying on when, when there's so much pressure with the finances. And, I had Josh Warrington on our podcast the other day, and he said, look, I know I'm one of these fighters that has the crowds and 20,000 follow me at Leeds. He's a bright guy, Josh. He knows that a lot of the money comes from that. So, we said to him, look, are you prepared just to take a hit to get out there? And he said, yeah, look, if I have to, if I take a unification fight, maybe get a belt, have to take the sort of lower money, but it just gets me out there. I've been out almost a year. I've got to be fighting. So, there's a lot of things in there. There's a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot of things. And that's why Usyk-Chisora has taken a long time to get over the line, because of the money that these guys are, and rightfully so, at that level are being paid. But it's a different world we're in now. And it's a world that we all have to adapt to. So, we're not going to get everything, but I think we're going to get quite a lot before the end of the year. And certainly the way it's looking and the announcements we've got coming up as well, there's plenty to be excited about, Ryan.
Final one, Adam, before I let you go. You mentioned Tasha Jonas there. One thing I wanted to finish on was the boom of women's boxing. We were talking about it on the Boxing Social podcast. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. Get the plug in there. We saw some great female fights throughout summer on both sides of the Atlantic. We've also got Chantel Cameron now fighting for a world title. Marshall Rankin's a brilliant fight by all accounts. It's a brilliant time to be emerging on the world scene right now, Adam, as a woman.
Absolutely, man. It's really not. It's not women's boxing. It's boxing, isn't it? It's just great fights we're getting. It's fantastic. I mentioned earlier Shannon Courtney and Rachel Ball. And at that level, you've had Katie and Bassoon. We got that one over the line. The rematch. Another cracker, another tough fight for Katie. The Tasha Jonas and Terry Harper fight was absolutely superb. So we'd love to see a rematch of that down the line. Savannah Marshall was my scholar at Sky Sports for many years through the amateurs. So I lived and breathed the journey with her. She's had her ups and downs. She's signed with Floyd Mayweather. She's finally found her sort of home with Peter Fury, and then she was going to have a world title shot and another one in April. Now she gets Hannah Rankin, who's a great character and a really good fighter, and I'm really excited about that. I think it's a terrific matchup. Chantel Cameron as well in a tough fight too. She's got a real opportunity. And look, if we get a couple more, we will. A couple more world champions there. It's a brilliant time. It takes me right back. Jane Couch was the pioneer. Let's not forget Jane. Back in the day, and she didn't probably quite have the matchups or the notoriety. A lot of people against women's boxing then, probably because of the matches, and there was a lot of mismatches then, and it wasn't the right time. But look at what happened with Nicola Adams and Katie in London 2012, and Katie Taylor's just been incredible, hasn't she, for sport, for life in general. She's a fantastic ambassador, but there's so many more that are now coming up. Terry Harper inspired by Katie. Look at Tasha Jonas. When that fight happened, Katie and Tasha in the Olympics, Johnny and Nelson and I sat there amongst 10,000 people. The atmosphere was unbelievable. I'm so glad that could become a rematch in the professional ranks. When Eddie called me and said, look, I've got Katie in the office, and what do you think? And I'm like, let's go for it. Let's do it. And I'm so pleased at how it's worked out, and it's inspiring. I've got daughters. They're inspired watching Katie Taylor. They want to get into the gym, get fit. Maybe they don't want to box, but they want to, they want to be like them. And it's brilliant to have role models. And they're such great women, aren't they? You look at Terry's fantastic, and Tasha's doing so much good in Liverpool, and they're brilliant. Chantel just slipped under the radar a bit. Now it's her opportunity. As I said, I know Savannah really well, and she's been the quiet one, the silent assassin, but she can really fight. She's got that win over Clarissa Shields in the amateurs. That's a great rematch down the line. So it's really exciting times, Ryan, for boxing generally, men, women. It's brilliant, and I think it's great that our sport is in many ways leading the way on that. So that's something we can all get really excited about. And there's so many great matches. They're all great matches, aren't they? And it's fantastic to see.
Well, Adam, I've kept you for just over a half hour, so I won't keep you any longer. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for speaking to Boxing Social as always, and I'm sure we'll catch you very soon.
Anytime, Ryan. No problem at all.